They thought it would be just another episode, just another interview, just another friendly Hollywood conversation on The View. But what happened that day left the studio in complete silence. Audience frozen, cameras cutting, producers scrambling behind the scenes. Because Denzel Washington, one of the most respected, disciplined, and grounded figures in Hollywood, did something no one expected. He stood his ground. Right there. Live. In front of millions. It all started with a simple question. But the tone, the intention, the challenge behind it shifted the entire atmosphere of the room. Joy Behar leaned forward, smiled. Not a friendly smile, but the kind that hides something sharp behind it. She thought she could corner him, humiliate him, turn the audience against him. But Denzel. He doesn't break. He doesn't fold. He doesn't play the Hollywood game. His response was calm, measured, but powerful enough to shatter the room. You could feel the tension. Whoopi looked uncomfortable. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. And Joy? She didn't stop there. She pushed harder. She crossed a line. And that's when everything changed. Voices were raised, chairs shifted, security moved, and for the first time in The View's long history, a guest, Denzel Washington, was asked to leave the stage. This is what really happened, and why Hollywood is still talking about it. The episode began like any other. The audience was buzzing, clapping, smiling, that familiar daytime TV cheerfulness filling the studio. The hosts sat at the table, perfectly lit under warm stage lights, ready to welcome their guest. Denzel Washington walked in with that same steady energy he's known for. No flash, no ego, just presence. He took his seat, greeted everyone politely, and the conversation started simple. Movies, upcoming projects, life lessons, faith, discipline. His voice was calm, measured, thoughtful, and the audience was hanging on to every word. He talked about responsibility, about staying grounded in a world that tries to tear you apart, about separating your identity from your career, about not letting fame define who you are. There was no tension, no conflict, just wisdom and respect. Even the hosts seemed drawn in, at first. But as Denzel spoke, something shifted across the table. Joy Behar leaned back, arms crossed, eyes narrowing just slightly. Because when Denzel talks about strength, purpose, and personal accountability, it challenges something in people who thrive on chaos. The studio stayed quiet. Not uncomfortable. Attentive. It was the kind of silence you get when someone is saying something real, something unfiltered, something not shaped for Hollywood approval. The mood was steady, controlled, balanced. No one in the room knew that within minutes, that calm would shatter, and the conversation would turn into a confrontation. It happened slowly at first, a question, a pause, a look. Joy Behar leaned forward, hands clasped, her expression tight, not curious but challenging. Her tone changed, the warmth faded. Something sharper slipped in. "So, Denzel," she said, her voice coated in that familiar sarcasm. "Do you really believe faith should guide your decisions in Hollywood? I mean, isn't that a bit—" She smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Out of touch?" The room went still. Denzel didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't break eye contact. He simply answered. "Faith isn't outdated," he said quietly. "It's responsibility. It's knowing who you are before the world tells you who to be." The crowd nodded. Some even clapped softly. But Joy wasn't done. She pressed. Harder. Sharper. "So, are you saying people who don't have faith lack responsibility?" There it was. The shift. Not a conversation, an accusation. The hosts exchanged glances. Sunny sat up straighter. Sarah's smile faded. Whoopi closed her eyes like she knew where this was going. Denzel took a breath. Slow, steady. His voice stayed gentle, even kind. I don't judge anyone, I'm just speaking my truth. But Joy cut in again. And some of us are speaking facts. You could feel the temperature in the room change. The audience stopped smiling. The panel stopped nodding. The discussion was no longer a discussion. It had become a battle of tone, respect, and dignity. And then, the moment everything snapped. Joy leaned back, crossed her arms, and laughed. Not a light laugh, not a playful one, but a dismissive laugh. The kind meant to belittle, to challenge, to provoke. So let me get this straight, she said, her voice raised just enough to invite the audience in. You think God tells you what roles to take, what movies to make, what to say? Come on, Denzel, be serious. The studio air tightened. You could hear the silence. Whoopi shifted in her seat. Sunny tried to interject. Even the audience didn't know whether to cheer or wince. But Denzel didn't react. He didn't give her what she was pushing for. There was no anger, no sharp comeback, just clarity. He spoke slowly, calmly, almost softly. I listened to my spirit. I listened to my calling, and that calling has brought me where I am. I don't expect you to understand it, but I won't apologize for it. Joy rolled her eyes. There it is, she said. That holier-than-thou attitude. She said it loud, loud enough to echo, loud enough to sting. Denzel's expression changed. Not anger, not frustration, but disappointment. The kind that says, this conversation is no longer respectful. He looked at her, not with hostility, but with finality. Respect goes both ways, he said. The audience exhaled, like they had been holding their breath. This was no longer just a disagreement. This was a line being crossed. And then it happened, the exact second the conversation stopped being a discussion and became something personal. Joy leaned forward, voice sharper now, no attempt to disguise the intent. People like you always hide behind faith when you can't explain yourselves, she said. It wasn't just disagreement anymore. It was an accusation, a dismissal of everything he had just shared, a direct attack on his character, not his point. The audience reacted, not loudly, but visibly, shifting, uncomfortable, as if they all felt the temperature in the room drop at once. Whoopi's eyes widened. Sunny looked down at the table. Even the camera crew paused, just a fraction of a second, because they knew what they were capturing was no longer routine television. And Denzel, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't snap back. He didn't play into the spectacle she was trying to create. He simply inhaled, slowly, like a man choosing his next move carefully. You don't have to agree with me, he said, voice steady. But you will speak to me with respect. It wasn't loud, it wasn't theatrical, but it was final. Joy smirked as if daring him to push further, and that was it. The shift was complete. The energy in the room changed. The conversation was no longer salvageable. Denzel knew it. Everyone knew it. He didn't need to argue. He didn't need to win. He just needed to walk away. Before the dignity in the room belonged to only one person. There was no shouting, no chaos, no dramatic slam of fists or raised voices. Just a silence. A silence heavier than anything that had been said on that stage. Denzel looked at Joy, not with anger, but with clarity, the kind of clarity that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you refuse to tolerate. He straightened in his chair, adjusted his jacket, and said, calmly, almost softly, I think I'm done here. Joy blinked as if she hadn't expected that, as if she thought the conversation would go on, that there would be more debating, more pushing, more tearing, but there was nothing left to say. He stood up. Whoopi reached out, calling his name, not to stop him, but to acknowledge what was happening. Sunny nodded slowly, sadness in her eyes, understanding the weight of the moment. The studio audience froze, unsure whether they should clap, speak, or simply watch. Joy tried to speak, but whatever she said didn't matter anymore. Denzel wasn't walking out in anger. He was walking out in self-respect. He didn't look back. Not once. He walked past the cameras, past the lights, past the stage where millions have sat and argued and tried to win. He didn't need to win. He had already won. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remove yourself from a place where respect no longer exists. And in that quiet exit, Denzel Washington delivered the loudest message of the entire show. The moment Denzel stepped off the stage, the cameras faded to commercial. But the real story was just beginning. Producers rushed in immediately, headsets crackling, voices sharp with urgency. Okay, what's the plan? Do we address it? Do we pretend it didn't happen? The room wasn't loud, but it was tense. Tension you could feel more than hear. Joy sat back in her chair, arms crossed, jaw tight. She didn't think she'd done anything wrong. In her mind, she was just having a conversation. But everyone else in that studio felt the weight of what had happened, the pressure, the shift, the line that had been crossed. Whoopi wasn't angry. She was disappointed, a disappointment that sat heavy, because she knew exactly what the audience saw. Sunny kept saying it quietly under her breath. We shouldn't have gone there. We shouldn't have gone there. A production assistant tried to find Denzel backstage. He was already gone, not storming out, just leaving, with peace, with purpose, with the kind of dignity no camera could capture. Meanwhile, Joy continued defending herself. He walked out because he couldn't handle being challenged, she said. But nobody agreed. They didn't say it aloud. They didn't have to. Everyone knew what the viewers would think. Everyone knew how the clips would circulate. Everyone knew how the narrative would unfold. And in that studio hallway, in that uneasy silence, the damage was already done. When the episode aired, it didn't take long. Clips spread like wildfire, first on Twitter, then TikTok, then everywhere, but it wasn't the argument people were talking about. It was the walkout. The moment Denzel stood up, calm and controlled. The way he nodded to the audience with quiet respect. The simple dignity of choosing to leave rather than escalate. That image became the centerpiece of the conversation. Comments poured in. Denzel handled that with class. You don't disrespect someone like that, ever. This wasn't about religion. It was about basic human decency. Even people who didn't agree with his beliefs stood with him, because the issue wasn't what he believed. It was the way he was treated for believing it. Joy, on the other hand, faced backlash, not for questioning him, but for how she questioned him. The tone, the dismissal, mockery disguised as just asking even saw through it. Think pieces emerged. Podcasts broke it down frame by frame. Body language experts weighed in. Clips of Denzel's past interviews resurfaced, showing the same calm, grounded, centered presence. And then a pattern became impossible to ignore. This wasn't Denzel reacting emotionally. This was a man with a strong sense of self. A man who knows when a conversation stops being a conversation. A man who chooses peace over performance. In the end, the public didn't just support Denzel, they admired him, because he reminded everyone of something simple. Respect is not optional. What happened that day wasn't really about a talk show. It wasn't about Hollywood, politics, or even faith. It was about something far more universal, something every person has faced in their own life. A moment where you were disrespected and had to decide who you were going to be, when someone talks down to you, when your beliefs are mocked, when your character is questioned, when you're made to feel small. On purpose, most people either explode or stay silent. But Denzel showed a third option, the strongest one. He stayed calm. He stayed grounded. He stayed himself. And then he walked away. No shouting. No bitterness, no fury, just self-respect. Because sometimes the real power isn't in winning the argument, it's in refusing to let someone drag you into a place that compromises your peace. This moment reminded millions of people watching that dignity matters, that respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you hold within yourself. The way you carry yourself when someone tries to belittle you. That's who you really are, and Denzel's message, even without saying it outright, was clear. You don't have to stay in spaces that don't respect you. You can leave. You can choose yourself. You can protect your peace. And when you do, you don't lose anything. You gain everything. In the end, this moment became more than a headline, more than a viral clip, more than a trending topic passing through the endless cycle of online noise. It became a reminder that grace is not weakness, that calm is not surrender, that choosing to walk away is not the same thing as losing. Denzel left that stage with the same thing he walked in with, his dignity. And sometimes that is the greatest victory a person can claim. Because life will always give you people who misunderstand you, people who test your patience, people who mistake your kindness for softness, your beliefs for naivety, your composure for fragility. But the truth is simple. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone who is determined not to see it. You don't have to defend your beliefs to someone who has already made up their mind. You don't have to stay in a room where respect is not reciprocated. You owe yourself more than that. Denzel understood that, and that's why this moment hit so many people so deeply. It wasn't about fame or status or being right. It was about remembering who you are even when someone tries to make you forget. So the next time you find yourself in that position, hurt, cornered, dismissed, or disrespected, remember this moment. Remember the silence, the walk, the unwavering composure. And remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply stand up, smile, and walk away.